Microsoft Teams has so many different features and settings that sometimes you might not know that there are certain things you can do in Microsoft Teams that are really cool. And in this video, we're going to look at 8 of those cool features. Now, if you like tips on Teams and that sort of thing, subscribe to the channel because I do have a number of videos on the channel on how to use Microsoft Teams. But in this video, we're going to look at 8 mysterious little features that I think you're going to really enjoy knowing about. For tip number 1, we're going to look at how we can add some visual appeal to our Teams site by putting some emojis into our channel names. So I'm going to go to my Coastal Hiking Club and I'm going to add a new channel. And I'm going to create a new channel and let's call this channel Food. We're going to bring some food supplies on our trip, and I want to make this a little bit more visual. Well, if I hit the Windows key and the period, it's going to allow me to bring up the emoji menu. And the emoji menu has a lot of different options, especially on Windows. I can search for something. So let's search for something like, I don't know if there's marshmallows here. No, maybe not. So let's go ahead and look for just a generic food icon or emoji here. And we'll say, okay, we're going to bring some bananas with us on the hike. So now you can see that I have a much more appealing visual display. I have the food supplies and I have a little banana here. Oh, bonus tip, tip number 1.5. You can also make it a private channel from here. But what I'm going to do here is add this channel in. Now, there is something to be cautious about here. So once this channel is added in, it's a little bit more visually appealing. Maybe I would choose a darker emoji here so you could see it a little bit better. But let's add another channel in here, and there's a little bit of a challenge that we have in here. This time, I'm going to use the Windows period key to bring up the emoji menu, and I'm going to bring up something such as hiking poles. Okay, so I'll put in hiking poles. I'll just do hiking. So here I'll do the boot for hiking, and then I will put in something like hiking poles. Hiking poles. Now, when I put this in normally, what you would expect to see in the behavior of a channel is that the channels will be arranged alphabetically. But you'll notice here that H comes after F. Why is hiking poles in front of the food supplies? It's because of the emoji. Emojis themselves have a sort order to them, and it's very difficult to know what that sort order is. So one of my recommendations is if you're using emojis in the channel names to add visual appeal, that you put the emojis at the end of the channel name, not at the beginning. Tip number 2. So when I go into my meeting here, if I want to go into a meeting, you'll notice that underneath the channel, I can meet now or I can schedule a meeting. Those are great options if I need them, but I can get more options if I go to calendar. If I go to my calendar and underneath new meeting, use the drop-down menu here, I can schedule a meeting in the same way I could within the channel, but notice I can also use a webinar or a live event. What a webinar will allow me to do is put in the same information that I might have in a regular meeting. I can make it reoccurring. I can do all sorts of interesting things, but it also generates a registration form for the webinar. So this is a great way to collect information from participants before the meeting occurs and to customize that registration form. So we'll close this one down. The other thing that I can do is I can go into scheduling a meeting. I'll just discard this meeting and I'll go in, schedule a new meeting, but this time I'll choose a live event. Like the webinar, the live event allows me to invite people in, but with the live event, I'm allowing external access to external presenters. That's one of my options as well. So one of the things that I recommend, tip number 2, is if you're scheduling meetings, consider using the calendar to schedule those meetings rather than go into the channel itself and schedule the meetings. Tip number 3. Tip number 3 has to do with calls. So if I click on my calls icon, you'll notice that it'll come up with information about different calls that I've had, missed calls, people that I can call within my team. And down here where it says don't forward, I can go into more settings for don't forward. Underneath the don't forward, I can go into forward to voicemail, and then I can go into the settings here, and what I can do is set up the voicemail. Now you'll notice here that if I go into configure the voicemail, it's going to give me a number of different options. I can record a greeting. I can even go in and I could type in a greeting and have it do voice to text in order to play that greeting when somebody comes into voicemail. So in my case, if I do recording a greeting, it'll bring up a keypad. So it'll bring up a meeting, but it'll be just like a regular phone.
To listen to your voice messages,
you can see that it'll ask me questions.
To change your personal greeting,
Now
press
underneath
2.
here I have my keypad selected,
To repeat this
and I can go in
press
and I
0.
can create a voicemail using the prompts
To
that you're
exit,
hearing in the
press
background.
the star key.
Tip number 4 has to do with files. Underneath files, you'll notice that I have Microsoft Teams in the OneDrive here. I can also go and add cloud storage. When I go to add cloud storage, you have a number of different vendors that I can go. A great one would be, for example, Dropbox, if I have shared files on a Dropbox account. And of course, Google Drive is very important, especially if you are in academia. A lot of people use Google Classroom information. So you can use those different cloud providers in addition to the Microsoft OneDrive. Tip number 5 has to do with chat. Underneath chat, you can see that I've had a conversation here with Diana Prince. Now, this would apply to a conversation that I'm having now or a conversation that I've had in the past. But let's say I want to have a conversation with Diana Prince, who, by the way, is Wonder Woman. So if I go here, you'll have this icon to break out the chat. So underneath the chat here, you'll notice this is now a floating box. So I can do this with multiple participants and have a broken out chat window for each of them. This makes it a lot easier to organize my chats and have multiple chats going all on at once. Tip number 6 has to do with sound. If I hit the ellipse up here next to my name and go into settings, when I click on here, you'll notice I have a lot of different options. And if I go to devices, you'll notice that I have a custom setup. You can see the microphones and such that I'm using here. You can do a test call. But here's a very interesting feature, high-fidelity music mode. So for example, I've just started a podcast called the Learning Mindset. And the Learning Mindset podcast, I'm hoping to at some point talk to people that are involved in the research of how we learn and how we can help people learn better. It's more of a podcast. But anyways, what I want to do when I'm interviewing those is if I have a Teams meeting and I want to ensure that I have the best quality audio, I can turn on high fidelity music mode. And then it'll actually go in and I can put echo cancellation in there as well. Now I do need to test this a little bit more, but this is a feature where I can put high fidelity music mode into Microsoft Teams to get better quality audio. For tip number 7, I'm also going to use the ellipse next to my name, and I'm going to go to keyboard shortcuts. You can see that there are a number of keyboard shortcuts that I can use in Windows, and this is a little bit hard to print because there's no option to print it. So what we can do is I have a software that I use called Snagit that allows me to do a scrolling capture. But if you don't have software that does a scrolling capture, you can always go to the C shortcuts for all platforms, and this will bring you out to the website that contains the same information. And then on this website here, you can print this out. You can see that you've got all of the different shortcuts for Teams for Windows as well as Mac. This is actually pretty handy if you happen to be, say, running a meeting and you have some participants that are on Mac, some participants that are on Microsoft Windows. Then what you can do is you can direct them to the appropriate URL for their shortcuts. Tip number 8 is about finding resources that you might need. So say, for example, I have this coastal hiking club. I want to go in and I can put tags on this particular event. Notice here that I have somebody as already tagged in here. In this case here, I've got a hiking tag and Bruce Wayne likes hiking. I could go in here and do other tags in here. So for example, I could create a new tag here. And let's say this is somebody who is maybe a specialist in water for outdoors. So somebody who knows how to make sure that we're purifying our water, making sure it's good. I can say, this is about water, not making it too complex here. And then I could say, let's say I'm an expert in this area. So I can put my name on here. And now I've created a tag. So you can see here I've got a tag assigned to me. I'm the water for the outdoors. And there's a tag assigned to Bruce Wayne where he is the person that talks about hiking. At this point, it's not that exciting, but the more you tag things, the more useful it becomes. There's another tool called Viva for insights, but that's beyond the scope of this tip. Tip number 8, you can tag your resources in order to find them better. I also have a lot of different tips for working with Microsoft Team meetings. So watch for those videos on the 8 tips for Microsoft Team meetings. And there you have 8 cool tips that you can use with Microsoft Teams. And which one was your favorite? I'd really like to know. Did you already know about these different settings and features? Or is this something where you've discovered something new that you're now going to use in your own Teams environments? Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe, like, and do all those YouTube-y things. Really appreciate it. Take care. Oh, and share with people. That's super helpful if you want to help out the channel. I really appreciate that. We'll see you in the next video.